You're redundant. Pack your bags. The words echoed through the conference room like a gunshot. 300 employees fell silent. The projectors still displayed our Q3 numbers, record-breaking profits, largely because of systems I'd built. But there I stood, center stage at the town hall meeting, while my director, Kenneth Ashford, pointed at me like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe. 24 hours later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Kenneth's voice cracked on the other end. Tessa, please. The legal team, they're saying we can't proceed. The Northridge acquisition, all $2.5 billion of it, it's frozen. They need your approval, your signature. I sat in my apartment, still in my pajamas, coffee going cold on the table. The same apartment I'd been packing boxes in, updating my resume in, crying in. The irony wasn't lost on me. That's unfortunate, I said, examining my nails. Tessa, be reasonable. The acquisition dies with my contract, Kenneth. I believe those were the terms I negotiated 3 years ago, the ones nobody bothered to read before yesterday's performance. The silence on his end was delicious. Before we dive into how everything fell apart and came together in the most spectacular way possible, a quick word huge thanks for 2K subs. We're officially on the road to 3K. If you enjoy these stories, subscribe and join us. Now, let me take you back to where this really began. My name is Tessa Mercer, and until that town hall meeting, I was the Senior Vice President of Strategic Integration at Caldwell Industries, a mid-tier pharmaceutical company with big ambitions. My official title made me sound more important than I felt most days, but the work spoke for itself. I'd orchestrated 4 major acquisitions in 6 years, each one adding hundreds of millions to our market cap. People always assumed I came from money when they heard I went to Princeton. The truth was messier and more beautiful than that. My mother cleaned houses in suburban New Jersey. My father drove a delivery truck for 30 years. They never missed a parent-teacher conference, never let me think that our 2-bedroom apartment was anything less than a kingdom. When Mom's employer, Mrs. Chen, found out I'd gotten into Princeton but couldn't afford it, she didn't just write a check. She sat my parents down and told them that investing in potential was never charity, it was common sense. She helped with my first year's expenses, and I worked 3 campus jobs to cover the rest. That background wasn't something I advertised in the boardrooms and executive lounges of Caldwell Industries, but it shaped everything about how I saw the world. I never forgot that success was part talent, part opportunity, and a whole lot of people who saw something in you before you saw it in yourself. That's why I always knew the names of the custodial staff, why I had lunch in the company cafeteria instead of the executive dining room, why I fought for comprehensive benefits packages in every acquisition deal I structured, and why Kenneth Ashford had always seen me as a problem. 6 months before the town hall incident, Caldwell Industries had begun preliminary discussions with Northridge Pharmaceuticals. On paper, it was a perfect match. Northridge had groundbreaking research in immunotherapy, but lacked distribution infrastructure. We had distribution channels across 48 states, but our research pipeline had gone stale. The acquisition would be our biggest yet, $2.5 billion, which would nearly double our company size overnight. I should have been excited. Instead, I felt uneasy from the first meeting. Kenneth had brought in an outside consulting firm, Brennan and Associates, to advise on the deal. The principal consultant was a man named Christopher Holloway, who had the kind of polished confidence that came from never being told no. He wore watches that cost more than most people's cars and had opinions on everything, despite understanding nothing about our actual operations. What Caldwell needs, Christopher announced in our second strategy meeting, is to trim the fat. Northridge is bringing innovation. You're bringing infrastructure. But infrastructure doesn't need this many people. I'd set down my pen carefully. Our distribution network works because of those people. They're not fat, they're the muscle that makes this company move. Kenneth had laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. Tessa's always been sentimental about staff. It's admirable, but this is business. It's business built on people, I'd countered. Every acquisition I've led has succeeded because we retained institutional knowledge. We don't gut teams, we integrate them. Christopher had smiled at me like I was a child who didn't understand adult conversations. Times change. The market rewards efficiency now, not loyalty. Over the following months, I watched the Northridge deal take shape in ways that made my stomach turn. The integration plan that Kenneth and Christopher developed called for terminating 40% of our current workforce within 6 months of closing. Not redundant positions, people. Angela from HR, who'd been with Caldwell for 15 years and knew every employee by name. James in logistics, who'd optimized our delivery routes so efficiently that we'd cut costs by 18% over 2 years. Entire teams who'd done nothing wrong except exist in the path of Kenneth's ambition and Christopher's efficiency models. I pushed back in every meeting. I presented alternative structures. I showed how retention-focused integrations had outperformed slash and burn approaches in comparable deals. I had data, case studies, 5 years of our own history proving my point. Kenneth's response was to start excluding me from key meetings. By month 4 of the acquisition process, I realized I was being systematically sidelined. Emails I should have been copied on mysteriously didn't include me. Meetings were scheduled during times I'd blocked off for other commitments, then held anyway with a casual "sorry you couldn't make it." My assistant, Holly, was the one who finally confirmed what I suspected. "They're building a parallel structure," she told me quietly one evening, after most people had left. "Kenneth has Christopher drafting all the integration documents. Legal is working off those, instead of your frameworks." "That's not protocol," I said, though I wasn't surprised. "All integration planning goes through my office. That's literally my job." "I know." Holly looked uncomfortable. "But Kenneth's been telling people that you're not aligned with the vision for the new Caldwell." Those are his exact words. "Not aligned with the vision. Corporate speak for, she's in the way." I made a decision that night. I went through every contract, every document, every agreement I'd ever signed with Caldwell Industries. My original employment contract, my promotions, the special provisions I'd negotiated after the Hyperion acquisition when 3 other companies had tried to recruit me away. That's when I found it. Clause 47, subsection C. In any acquisition exceeding $1 billion in total value, all integration protocols and final documentation require approval and signature from the Senior Vice President of Strategic Integration, with said approval being non-transferable and essential to deal execution. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Judith Wang, read it over the phone while I waited. "This is airtight, Tessa," she said finally. "They literally cannot close the Northridge deal without your signature. This clause makes you essential personnel for this transaction. Can they fire me and then get the signature from whoever replaces me? No. It says non-transferable. It's tied to you specifically, and it's tied to your active employment. If you're terminated before the deal closes, the clause becomes void, which means they'd have to renegotiate the entire approval structure. With a deal this size and this far along, that would likely kill it. The timeline would collapse." I'd sat with that information for 3 days, saying nothing to anyone. Looking back, I should have confronted Kenneth immediately, should have used this as leverage to get back to the table, to protect the employees who were about to be sacrificed for efficiency metrics. But I didn't get the chance. Kenneth made his move first. The quarterly town hall was supposed to be a celebration. We just posted record profits, up 37% from the previous year. The Northridge acquisition was moving toward final approval. By all accounts, Caldwell Industries was thriving. The entire company gathered in the main auditorium. Kenneth stood at the podium, looking every inch the visionary CEO he believed himself to be. He talked about innovation, about the future, about making hard choices for the greater good. Then, he unveiled the new organizational chart. My name wasn't on it. Instead, Christopher Holloway's photo appeared in a newly created position, Chief Integration Officer, reporting directly to Kenneth. A murmur went through the crowd. People were looking around, trying to find me in the audience. Holly, sitting next to me, grabbed my hand. Tessa, she whispered. I kept my face neutral, but my heart was hammering. Kenneth continued. As we move into this exciting new phase, we need leaders who embrace change without hesitation, who understand that loyalty to the mission sometimes means letting go of the past. He was looking directly at me now. Half the room had turned to stare, which is why I'm announcing that several legacy positions will be eliminated, effective immediately. These roles have served us well, but they're no longer aligned with our trajectory. Legacy positions, as if I were a piece of outdated software. Tessa Mercer, our former SVP of Strategic Integration, is among those being transitioned out. The room went completely silent. He'd already decided. This wasn't a discussion, it was a public execution. I stood up slowly. Every eye in that auditorium was on me. Kenneth, I wasn't aware we'd discussed this. His smile was thin. Your role has become redundant, Tessa. We've restructured around more agile frameworks. I'm sure you understand. Redundant. I repeated the word, tasting its absurdity. The person who structured every successful acquisition this company has completed is redundant. I appreciate your past contributions, Kenneth said, voice dripping with condescension. But we're moving in a different direction. I'll need you to pack your belongings and surrender your access credentials by end of business today. Someone gasped. Maybe it was Holly. Maybe it was one of the 100 other people who knew exactly what I'd built here. You're redundant. Pack your bags. Kenneth's voice rose, losing its professional veneer. I don't have time for drama, Tessa. Security will escort you out if necessary. The humiliation was designed to be total, public, a message to anyone else who might question his authority. I gathered my things, walked out of that auditorium with my head high, even though my hands were shaking, even though I wanted to scream, to argue, to make them understand. But I didn't, because I'd already seen Clause 47, subsection C, and I knew Kenneth hadn't. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls, all from Caldwell Industries, all from Kenneth's executive line. I ignored them. Holly texted me, legal is losing their minds. Something about the Northridge deal. Kenneth looks like he's going to have a stroke. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. Took my time. For the first time in 6 years, I had nowhere to be. My phone rang again. This time, it was a number I recognized. Martin Castellano, Caldwell's general counsel. I answered. Tessa, thank God, we have a situation. Hello, Martin. How can I help you? Oh wait, I'm redundant. I'm not sure I'm qualified to help with anything. Tessa, please. We just discovered a clause in your employment contract for the Northridge acquisition. It requires your approval signature. Clause 47, subsection C. I said calmly. Yes, I'm aware. You knew. I negotiated that clause 3 years ago after the Hyperion deal. My attorney insisted on it, given how critical my role is in large acquisitions. Or was. Since I'm redundant now, I suppose it doesn't matter. Tessa. Martin's voice was strained. Without your signature, we cannot close the Northridge acquisition. The deadline is in 72 hours. If we miss it, the deal collapses. We've already spent $40 million in preparation and due diligence. The stock price is up based on announced merger. If it falls through, that sounds very stressful, Martin. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. We need you to come in and sign the documents. But I've been terminated. My access credentials were revoked yesterday. I believe Kenneth's exact words were pack your bags. A long pause. What would it take for you to sign? We'll discuss that, I said. But not with you, Martin. Send Kenneth. He's the one who made this decision. He can be the one to fix it. Kenneth called that afternoon. The man who'd humiliated me in front of 300 colleagues, who'd dismissed 6 years of work as legacy and redundant, now needed something only I could provide. Tessa, we need to talk. Do we? I thought we covered everything yesterday. I'm redundant, remember? I may have been hasty. You publicly fired me, Kenneth, at a town hall meeting, in front of the entire company. There's no hasty about that. That was calculated. Silence. Then, what do you want? An apology would be a start. Fine. I apologize. Now will you, not to me, to every person in that auditorium who watched you, treat me like garbage. But we'll get to that. First, let's talk about terms. I heard him breathing heavily on the other end. What terms? My reinstatement. Effective immediately. Full restoration of title, responsibilities, and authority. Christopher Holloway's consulting contract terminated. And we're going back to my integration plan, the one that doesn't destroy 40% of our workforce. That's impossible. We've already. Then the acquisition dies, Kenneth. Your choice. You're being unreasonable. I'm being redundant, apparently. Redundant things don't need to be reasonable. He hung up. An hour later, Martin called back. Kenneth is willing to discuss reinstatement, but he's refusing the other terms. Then we have nothing to discuss. Tessa, there are thousands of shareholders who invested in a company that I helped build. Kenneth wants to tear it apart for short-term optics. I'm not signing off on that. He's talking about suing you for breach of contract. My contract obligates me to execute my duties while employed. I'm not employed anymore. He made sure of that. Tell Kenneth he can sue me, fire me again, or negotiate in good faith. Those are his options. Segment 8: The Power Shift. By day 2, the situation had escalated beyond Kenneth's control. The Caldwell Board of Directors got involved. I received a call from Ellen Pritchard, the board chairwoman. Unlike Kenneth, Ellen had always been straightforward with me. Tessa, I want to hear your side of this. I told her everything. The systematic exclusion from the Northridge planning, Christopher Holloway's slash and burn integration model, the employee termination list, Kenneth's public humiliation tactic. I negotiated Clause 47 specifically to prevent situations like this, I explained. Large acquisitions require careful integration. If leadership can just sideline the integration expert on a whim, bad deals happen. Employees get hurt. Shareholders lose value. That clause was meant to be a safeguard. And now, Kenneth has triggered it by terminating you. He didn't read my contract before firing me. That's not my failure. It's his. Ellen was quiet for a moment. What you're asking for, reversing the integration plan, terminating the Brennan contract, Kenneth will fight that. Then, he can explain to shareholders why he torpedoed a $2.5 billion acquisition because he refused to keep good employees. You know this could get ugly. It already is ugly, Ellen. I'm just the only one willing to say it out loud. Another pause. The board is meeting tonight. Don't sign anything until you hear from me. The board meeting lasted 4 hours. Holly kept me updated via text. She still had friends in the executive suite who were watching the drama unfold. Kenneth showed up with Christopher and a lawyer. Board doesn't look happy. Ellen is grilling Kenneth about why he didn't review your contract first. One of the board members just called the town hall stunt grossly unprofessional. Christopher is trying to defend the integration plan. Someone asked him to explain why cutting 40% of staff is better than your model. He's struggling. Ellen just asked Kenneth directly, is your ego worth $2.5 billion? At 10:47 p.m., my phone rang. Ellen, the board has made a decision. Kenneth is being placed on administrative leave, effective immediately. We're offering you full reinstatement as SVP of Strategic Integration, with a seat on the executive committee. Your integration plan will be implemented in full. Christopher Holloway's contract is terminated, and we're prepared to offer you a retention package worth $3 million, vested immediately, to ensure your commitment through the Northridge transition. I'd been prepared for a lot of scenarios, but not this. What about Kenneth long-term? That's being determined. But he won't have authority over you or this acquisition. The board will be providing direct oversight. And the employees? The ones who were scheduled for termination. Your plan protects them. We're honoring that. I closed my eyes, feeling something I hadn't felt in months: hope. I want one more thing. Name it. A public apology. Not to me specifically, to the company. Kenneth needs to acknowledge that what he did at that town hall was wrong, that he acted without proper review, and that his behavior doesn't reflect Caldwell's values. Done. We'll draft it tonight. He'll deliver it tomorrow. The board meeting lasted 4 hours. Holly kept me updated via text. She still had friends in the executive suite who were watching the drama unfold. Kenneth showed up with Christopher and a lawyer. Board doesn't look happy. Ellen is grilling Kenneth about why he didn't review your contract first. One of the board members just called the town hall stunt grossly unprofessional. Christopher is trying to defend the integration plan. Someone asked him to explain why cutting 40% of staff is better than your model. He's struggling. Ellen just asked Kenneth directly, "Is your ego worth $2.5 billion? At 10:47 p.m., my phone rang. Ellen, the board has made a decision. Kenneth is being placed on administrative leave, effective immediately. We're offering you full reinstatement as SVP of Strategic Integration, with a seat on the executive committee. Your integration plan will be implemented in full. Christopher Holloway's contract is terminated, and we're prepared to offer you a retention package worth $3 million, vested immediately, to ensure your commitment through the Northridge transition." I'd been prepared for a lot of scenarios, but not this. What about Kenneth long term? That's being determined, but he won't have authority over you or this acquisition. The board will be providing direct oversight. And the employees? The ones who were scheduled for termination? Your plan protects them. We're honoring that. I closed my eyes, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I want one more thing. Name it. A public apology. Not to me specifically, to the company. Kenneth needs to acknowledge that what he did at that town hall was wrong, that he acted without proper review, and that his behavior doesn't reflect Caldwell's values. Done. We'll draft it tonight. He'll deliver it tomorrow. Walking back into Caldwell Industries felt surreal. It had been 71 hours since Kenneth had publicly fired me. Now I was returning with more authority than I'd left with. Holly met me at the elevator, tears in her eyes. The email went out this morning. Everyone knows you're back. They're calling it the greatest comeback in company history. The apology had gone out to all staff at 8 a.m. To the Caldwell Industries team, I made a serious error in judgment at our recent town hall meeting. I terminated Tessa Mercer without proper review of contractual obligations and without appropriate respect for her substantial contributions to this company. This action was unprofessional and does not reflect the values we claim to uphold. Tessa has been fully reinstated, and I apologize to her and to all of you for the disruption and distress this situation caused. Kenneth Ashford. It wasn't everything I'd wanted, but it was something. An acknowledgement. A record. The Northridge acquisition closed 3 days later. I signed the final documents in a conference room with Martin, Ellen, and 4 attorneys present. My signature, the one Kenneth had dismissed as redundant, unlocked $2.5 billion in value. But more importantly, it protected 847 jobs. People who would wake up tomorrow and still have their careers, their health insurance, their dignity. Christopher Holloway was gone. Kenneth was still on leave, his future uncertain. And I had a new contract with protections that made it very clear. Integration expertise wasn't optional or legacy or redundant. It was essential. The Northridge integration took 8 months. Unlike Kenneth's slash and burn vision, we did it methodically. We identified true redundancies, systems, not people. Where roles overlapped, we retrained, rather than terminated. Where Northridge brought innovation, we paired it with our institutional knowledge instead of replacing it. The result? 18 months after the acquisition closed, Caldwell Industries' market cap had increased by 127%. Employee satisfaction scores hit an all-time high, and we were named one of the top healthcare companies for workplace culture by 3 major publications. Kenneth never returned from administrative leave. The board offered him a resignation package, which he took. Last I heard, he was consulting for a private equity firm. Christopher Holloway moved to a different consulting group. I don't follow his career. As for me, I stayed at Caldwell for another 3 years, led 2 more acquisitions, both successful. Built a team that understood integration wasn't just about spreadsheets and efficiency metrics, it was about people. Eventually, I left to start my own consulting firm. Not the kind that comes in and recommends cutting 40% of staff. The kind that helps companies grow, without forgetting that every employee number represents a person with a mortgage, kids in school, dreams that matter. My mother still asks me about that time you got fired and then unfired. She tells the story at family gatherings, always with the same ending. That's my daughter. She doesn't back down. Mrs. Chen, who helped me get to Princeton all those years ago, sent me a card when she read about the Northridge deal in the Wall Street Journal. It said, "I always knew you'd do important things, but I'm most proud that you did them the right way." The right way. That's the part that matters. What happened at Caldwell Industries wasn't really about Clause 47, subsection C. It wasn't about a $2.5 billion acquisition or Kenneth's ego or even my signature. It was about a choice every organization makes, usually without realizing it. Are people resources to be optimized, or are they the foundation of everything valuable? Kenneth saw redundancy. I saw Angela, who knew every employee by name. James, who'd optimized delivery routes. Holly, who'd warned me when the walls were closing in. Hundreds of professionals who'd built careers at Caldwell, who'd chosen to invest their time and talent in making it successful. The business case for protecting those jobs was strong. I had the data to prove it. But even if the numbers had been less clear, I would have fought the same fight. Because I remembered what it felt like to be counted out before anyone saw what I could do. I remembered Mrs. Chen seeing potential instead of risk. We don't get many opportunities in our careers to truly stand up for what we believe in. Most days are compromises, small battles, incremental progress. But sometimes, the universe hands us a moment where the choice is stark, fold, or hold the line. I held the line, not because I was brave or special, but because I'd negotiated a contract that gave me leverage, and because walking away from 847 people felt worse than any professional risk I might face. The leverage mattered. Let me be clear about that. Without Clause 47, Kenneth would have succeeded in firing me, implementing his plan, and gutting the workforce. Good intentions don't stop bad decisions. Power dynamics do. That's why I tell every young professional I mentor now, read your contracts, negotiate protections, build leverage while you have value, not when you need it. The system doesn't reward righteousness, it rewards power. If we want to use power for good, we have to claim it first. The Caldwell situation became something of a case study in business schools. I've been invited to speak about it at conferences, though I usually decline. The story gets simplified in those contexts. Clever executive outsmarts vindictive boss, which misses the point entirely. The real story is about systems. Kenneth wasn't uniquely evil. Christopher wasn't unusually callous. They were operating within a business culture that rewards short-term efficiency over long-term sustainability, that treats people as expendable, that mistakes cruelty for toughness. That culture exists because we accept it. Because boards prioritize quarterly earnings over employee retention. Because shareholders demand growth without asking what's being sacrificed for it. Because consultants can make millions recommending layoffs without ever meeting the people they're eliminating. Changing that culture requires more than one contract clause or one stopped acquisition. It requires thousands of small decisions by people who have a choice. The board member who asks hard questions about employee impact, the executive who refuses to implement destructive policies, the consultant who recommends sustainable growth instead of slash and burn. Most people don't have a Clause 47 to fall back on. They get fired, and there's no dramatic reversal, no board intervention, no happy ending. But they can still make choices. They can build networks that help them land somewhere better. They can refuse to implement policies they know are wrong, even if it costs them. They can document everything, know their rights, and make it expensive for bad actors to win. And those of us who do have power, whether from contracts, positions, expertise, or resources, we have an obligation to use it wisely. Not just for ourselves, but for the people who don't have it. That's the real lesson from Caldwell Industries. 5 years after the town hall incident, I ran into Kenneth at an industry conference. We were both speaking on different panels. I was presenting on sustainable integration practices. He was talking about agile restructuring. We didn't speak during the conference, but I saw him in the hotel bar that evening, sitting alone. Against my better judgment, I approached. Kenneth. He looked up, surprised. Tessa, I wasn't sure neither was I admitted. But we're both here. He gestured to the seat across from him. I sat. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, I read about your firm. The work in Boston. It's impressive. Thank you. Another pause. I handled the Caldwell situation poorly. Yes, you did. The board, they said. I let my ego override my judgment. That I saw your caution as opposition instead of expertise. That's accurate. He smiled weakly. You're not going to make this easy. Why would I? Kenneth looked into his drink. For what it's worth, the acquisition worked out. Better than my plan would have. I can admit that now. 847 people kept their jobs, Kenneth. That's what worked out. I know. He met my eyes. I'm sorry. I should have said that years ago. I nodded slowly. I appreciate you saying it now. We talked for another 20 minutes. Not friends. Never that. But perhaps two people who'd learned different lessons from the same crisis. Kenneth had landed on his feet. People like him usually do. But he'd also lost something at Caldwell. A reputation. Trust. The trajectory he'd been on. Whether he'd actually learned anything, I couldn't say. But at least he'd acknowledged the harm. Sometimes that's all we get. These days, my firm handles about 20 integration projects a year. We're selective. We only work with companies that commit to our principles. Transparency with employees, good faith retention efforts, sustainable growth models. We turn down a lot of business. Companies that want us to rubber stamp plans that are already decided. Private equity firms looking for someone to make layoffs look strategic. Executives who think integration means elimination. It's not always profitable to have principles. We'd make more money if we were less picky about clients. But I didn't leave Caldwell to recreate the same problems somewhere else. Every project we take on, I think about those 847 employees. Most of them are still at Caldwell, or they moved on to other opportunities on their own terms. Several have reached out over the years to thank me. Those messages mean more than any paycheck. One in particular stands out. It was from James in logistics, the one who'd optimized the delivery routes. I never got a chance to tell you what it meant, he wrote. I was 3 years from retirement when Kenneth's plan would have cut me. No one would have hired me at 62. I would have lost everything. You saved my life. I got to retire with dignity. My granddaughter just started college. I'm helping with her tuition. None of that happens if you don't fight for us. Thank you. That's what it was about. Not the $2.5 billion, not the board drama, or Kenneth's comeuppance, or my clever contract clause. A granddaughter in college. A retirement with dignity. A life that continued on its intended path because someone with power chose to use it responsibly. I keep James's emails saved on my phone. On hard days, when I'm tempted to compromise on principles or take an easier path, I read it. Remember what actually matters. The story of that town hall meeting has been told a dozen different ways. In some versions, I'm the hero who brilliantly outmaneuvered a villain. In others, I'm the difficult employee who held a company hostage over ego. The truth is messier than either version. I was angry and hurt and scared. I used leverage because I had it, not because I was noble. I got lucky that my lawyer insisted on Clause 47 3 years earlier. I got lucky that Ellen Pritchard was board chair. and that she cared more about doing the right thing than protecting Kenneth. Luck and leverage. That's what made the difference. But I also made a choice. When Kenneth's voice echoed through that auditorium, "You're irredundant. Pack your bags." I could have accepted it, updated my resume, taken a severance package, moved on. No one would have blamed me. Instead, I went home and read my contract, made a plan, drew a line, and when they came asking for my signature, I made them understand that people aren't redundant. Systems are, processes are, but human beings, with their knowledge and relationships and granddaughters in college, they're irreplaceable. That's the part of the story that matters. Not that I won, not that Kenneth lost, but that when it counted, hundreds of people kept their jobs because someone with power chose to use it for something other than self-interest. We all get those choices, in different ways. Usually they're smaller, less dramatic, no $2.5 billion acquisitions hanging in the balance. But they still matter. The choice to speak up in a meeting when something's wrong, to refuse to implement a policy that harms people, to negotiate for others, not just ourselves, to read the contract and know our value. Small choices compound. They build careers and companies and cultures. They shape whether we become the kind of people who see redundancy or possibility. I chose possibility. I chose people, and I've never regretted it. 24 hours after Kenneth screamed at me in front of 300 colleagues, he was begging for my signature. It would be easy to end the story there, with that poetic reversal, but the real ending is quieter. It's James at his granddaughter's college graduation. It's Angela still at Caldwell, now running HR. It's Holly, who I hired at my firm, building her own career on principles that matter. It's me, knowing that when I had leverage, I used it for something worthwhile. That's the story. Not revenge, not victory. Just the choice to remember that behind every business decision, there are people whose lives hang in the balance. And sometimes, if we're lucky and prepared and brave enough, we can tip that balance toward justice. If this story resonated with something in your own experience, whether it's workplace dynamics, standing up for what's right, or just appreciating a well-fought battle, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. We're pushing for 3,000 subscribers, so if this story was satisfying, hit that button and help us get there. See you in the next one.